Hey everybody, Jem Schofield here, and welcome to the Canon Cinema EOS C200 and C200B video training series. We are in Canon's Burbank facility in their amazing prep bay, and this video is all about audio, so let's get started. So the first thing we want to do is we want to talk about how we get audio into the C200 and the C200B. And there's basically three ways to do that. So if I pan the camera system here, you'll see the monaural mic on the left front of the camera system here. So we can get scratch audio into the camera quickly and easily with that. Great also if you're using the camera system on a gimbal system, just to make sure that you have some scratch audio coming into the camera. So the second way that we can get audio into the camera system is over here in this mic terminal. And if I open this up, it is a standard 3.5 millimeter jack, and we can plug in a powered microphone into here so that we get a better quality scratch track, or if we're running and gunning, we can use just a smaller powered mic for that, and it'll give us a better quality than we would get with the monaural mic that I just showed you on the front of the camera. And then the third way we get audio into the camera system are with the two built-in XLR inputs on the camera. We have input 1 here and input 2 here, and I have this configured in a pretty typical way. I have, for run and gun right now, a condenser mic which is plugged into input 1. And then there is a wireless receiver here, which is receiving a signal from my lavalier, and a transmitter that is plugged into input 2. And over here on this side of the camera body, we also have our hard controls in terms of how we can basically take our signal in and set it up so that it's routed correctly. So in this situation, what we have is we have this mic here, this condenser mic, our boom mic, and that is going into input 1, and we have it set up to a mic plus 48 volts, which is basically phantom power. We also have it set to analog because this is an analog signal that's coming down here. If we're using something that had a digital signal coming through XLR, then we would set that to AES/EBU. Now for input 2, it's a little bit different. It's still analog because there's a DA converter, a digital analog converter, that is in that receiver. Right now this is set to mic, but the way the sound recordist has this set up, he's actually feeding a line level to the camera system. So I'm going to switch that over from mic to line level. And when are we using line level? Well, first of all, generally when we have a sound recordist who has a preamp on his mixer recorder or her mixer recorder that is a higher output where we can bypass essentially the preamp inside of the camera system. So in a lot of situations where we may be doing the audio ourselves, we may actually be feeding a mic level when we're using a wireless transmitter and receiver because we're just going directly from transmitter to receiver. But when we are again going through a mixer recorder and there's a sound recordist, then oftentimes you will set that to line level. So let's go ahead and pan around here so we can take a look at some of the other controls that are on the exterior of the camera system. So here we are at the back of the camera. So I really love this area in terms of how I can control the audio. I'm just going to open up this door here. And the first thing we'll take a look at are these settings. Now we can change between A and M for both channel 1 and channel 2. A being automatic gain control, which is really kind of a big no-no unless you're using it for scratch audio. Automatic gain control, basically camera's listening, it's trying to make sure that your levels are always basically the same, but it does not take into consideration the noise floor. So if somebody's 10 feet away, it's going to try to make sure that their audio is at the same place as somebody who's 2 feet away. Obviously, if it's boosting that audio using the preamps in the camera, when somebody's 10 feet away, you're going to hear a lot more of that noise in that space. So generally, we'll switch both of those over to manual, especially when, again, we're not recording scratch audio. And then we have our levels here. And as I said before, we've got our condenser mic and our lavalier. Channel 1 is our condenser mic, and we're going to increase the levels there, and you can see those levels increasing. For my lavalier mic, I'm going to go ahead and increase my levels here, and you can see those now starting to show up on the meters. And we're now going to talk about one of my absolute favorite features on the C200 and C200B, and it is assignable button 9, which is audio status. I'm going to press that button, and you're going to see right here we get 2 pages that show up that give us immediate input in terms of how our audio is being routed and being recorded with the camera system. So you can see here that I've got input 1, which is set to mic plus 48. We have input 2 that's set to line level. We have input 1 in terms of channel 3, which is the mic plus 48 being recorded to channel 3. That's really cool because we can actually do a safety track, which I'll show you in a minute for that. And then input 2, which is that line level, is now going to channel 4. So we are recording the audio that's coming in from the XLR inputs to actually 4 channels on the camera. We can also go in here, we can see where our audio headphone volume is set and also how we are monitoring our audio. Right now, if I had a pair of headphones plugged in, I'd be monitoring channel 1 out of one headphone and channel 2 out of another headphone. So the second page of the audio status will show you where we are routing that audio and how. So you'll see here to my SD cards, we are recording LPCM, 16-bit 4-channel. So we're recording all 4 of those channels. And then over SDI, we are spitting out a 24-bit 4-channel out of the SDI. So if you're going to an external recorder or you were spitting the audio out to something else, you could do that. And over the HDMI terminal, we are spitting out LPCM 16-bit, and we are pushing out 2 of the channels. And this would be also if you were going to, let's say, an external recorder. And in a minute, I'll show you how you can choose the channels that are going over HDMI. So you'll see over here on the bottom right that it says if you press set, you can go into audio setup. And set means pressing in the joystick. So we press in the joystick and it jumps immediately to the audio setup menu so we can get to all of those features. And you can see here that there are 4 pages or submenus inside of here. So under the first one, we can see that we can select channel 1, channel 2 inputs. And if I choose that, we can decide what's being recorded to channel 1 and channel 2. Is it going to be the audio that's coming into here through the input terminals, which are your XLR inputs? The second choice is the mic terminal, which I showed you on the right side of the camera body, that 3.5 millimeter mic terminal. And then the third option is to record the monaural mic audio to channel 1 and channel 2. Currently, we'll leave that on input terminals, which are XLR inputs. And then we can also choose in terms of what happens with our channel 2 input. Right now, we want to decide what is actually recorded onto channel 2. So we want to decide where that audio is coming from. Is it coming from input 2, which is right here, or is it coming from input 1, which is right here? Why would we want to do that? Well, if I unplug right now what's inside of input 2, which is currently my lavalier mic, and I now change this to input 1, what will happen is this microphone right here will be recorded both onto channels 1 and channel 2. So what we can do is if we're doing 2-channel recording, we can actually set these levels differently. So for instance, if I'm recording onto channel 1 from this input here, I could set my levels a little bit hotter, and then I could set what my recording level is that's going to channel 2 on my recording a little bit lower. So this is one way that we can actually set up a safety track, especially if we're using one microphone on the system. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this mic back into input 2 here. So I'm just going to go ahead and plug that in. And I'm going to go back into the menu system here, and I am now going to record what is coming in from input 2 to channel 2. So that's how that all works. And then inside of this menu, we also can choose our channel 3 and channel 4 inputs on this camera system. So just like with channels 1 and 2, in this case, if I wanted to, I could record the same thing to channels 3 and 4. So right now, input terminals 1 and 2. I could choose a different terminal, the mic terminal or the monaural mic. In a lot of situations, you could actually set this up so that you have your input terminals recording to channels 1 and 2, but you always have that built-in microphone recording to channels 3 and 4, just so that you have scratch audio in situations when you are shooting with the camera system. I'm actually going to go ahead and set that back to input terminals, because we're now going to go to the second page here under audio setup. And we can actually go in here and we can set up our recording levels to channels 3 and 4, which gives us the ability to record inputs 1 and 2 using these levels right here, and we can do safety tracks to channels 3 and 4. So I'm going to go into manual here, and I'm going to go into my channel 3 level. And what we can do is we can actually increase or decrease the level that's coming in to channel 3. Now, what's being recorded on channel 1 right now, right here, is now also being recorded to channel 3. And what's being recorded on channel 2 right here, which is the lavalier, is also being recorded to channel 4. So again, what's really, really cool about this, and I'm going to hit set, is I can set up safety recordings here for both my condenser microphone and also my lavalier microphone, so that I have safeties for those two recordings there. So a tremendous amount of flexibility in terms of what I can do and how I can set those up using those audio controls in the camera. A couple of other menus in here, so we're just going to go into that third page there and just talk about a couple of quick things. If you are in audio situations where you need to attenuate or lower the input of the recording that's coming in from your microphone, you can activate what's called an attenuator. And this might be because your microphone is too hot in terms of the signal that's coming in, even when your recording levels are turned all the way down. It may also be in situations where somebody is, let's say, turning on a car, or you're recording fireworks, where there are these huge changes in terms of dynamic range as far as your recording. So you can activate that attenuator. That attenuator is a 20 dB attenuator if you turn that on. The last thing I want to show you in here is actually the limiter function. And if I go back here to our audio meters, if we take a look at our meters, down at the bottom here, and sometimes meters run from left to right, sometimes they're bottom to top. So on the left-hand side or on the bottom would be minus 96 decibels, which essentially reads as silence. And at the top of the meter, or on the right side of the meter, we have 0. Anything that goes beyond 0 clips, that's bad. So what a limiter does is it essentially clamps the audio. It's listening, essentially, and it looks for when the audio's about to clip, and then it basically clamps that audio to make sure that you don't clip. Now, what you can do when you use a limiter is lose some of your frequencies, but when you are, again, in situations where you're recording talent or you're recording certain things that are changing considerably in terms of their dynamic range, you may want to activate a limiter, especially if it's just a one-man band when you're using the camera. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn that limiter off. I'm also going to go ahead and turn that attenuator off, because I don't need those in this situation. And we're going to now go to the fourth page here. And I just want to talk about a couple of things. This is where we can change our headphone volume. I've already talked about in another video assignable buttons. You could change your headphone volume by assigning buttons to it for plus and minus as well. But this is how you can get to it in your menu system. And if I just step out of there, we can also decide what channels we're monitoring. It's very, very common, actually, that we'll hear channel 1 and channel 1 out of our left and our right headphones if we are only recording with one microphone, even if we're setting up a safety so that we can hear that microphone in 2 ears. But as soon as you're recording more than one microphone, you would definitely want to go in here and listen to the different channels with each your left and right. And then HDMI OUT channels, this is where we actually get to decide over that HDMI terminal what channels of audio we're pushing over it, because it does support 2 channels, not 4 channels of audio. So we can actually push channels 1 and 2, which would be the way we'd be doing it in this situation, or channels 3 and 4. So that is an overview of audio recording with the C200 and the C200B. If you want to look into that further, please refer to the documentation, the user manual, and thanks for watching.